So it's Monday, the start of a new week. Hopefully some of y'all are digging this new weekly format. We'll see how it works. This week, well, there's a race this weekend. There's a race this weekend, and we'll be there. But this week we've got the customer engine that hopefully we can get put together and put on a run stand by the end of the week. Fingers crossed. That thing, I'll go in when we start working on it. I'll go into some of the nightmares that we've had with that. It's not been anything crazy. It's just been these little tiny things that you have on projects from time to time, but generally you have a little tiny thing here and a little tiny thing there. This one's kind of been like, we'll get into that. But we're going to start out here on the Cougar. Let me explain. In 2 weeks, we're going to have this street style race at Union Dragway. It's called the $100 Brawl, I think is what they're calling it. But it's a streetcar race. And we were going to unveil the 63 F100 at that race, because that is going to be a street truck. It's going to be for street style racing. Unfortunately, I'm falling victim to a lot of same things that other people are, is getting parts from time to time, and some parts are just hard to get, hard to come by, and the truck falls into that category. So we're going to work on a backup plan, and that's going to be the Cougar. Now, the Cougar was never intended to be a race car per se, but we're going to have to lean on it a little bit for this instance. I don't know how competitive it's going to be, because I've never throttled it wide open to know. But we've got a few things to do. One, we had a belt break, and a little misaligned is honestly why it broke. So we're going to go ahead and address that and dig into this thing and try to address the misalignment issues while we're there. The alternator needs to move forward a little bit on this thing, so we're going to jump into those things. So maybe later in the week we'll get to go out to the test spot and make a test hit on this thing and see if we can get it to hook, and see if we can get it to go down, and see what kind of pass it makes, because I've actually never been wide open throttle in this car, so I don't know what it will do. I don't know if the transmission will even handle it if I do go wide open. So a lot of variables with this. This has just been something we've been cruising around. It wasn't really ever built to be a race car, so it's just been something we've been driving around town and enjoying it. But now it's time to button a few loose ends up and see if we can't make it a little more competitive. I don't know if we can, especially given the short time frame. Again, 2 weeks to make changes and do things. We'll see how it works, but I'm gonna take you along for the ride. So this car runs this big, wide toothed belt, kind of like what you would find on a blower car, but definitely not a blower. But it's the style pulley and all I'm running. Well, I think part of the problem is the setup on this car doesn't allow for the alternator pulley to line up quite just dead perfect with the other pulleys. It needs to come out a little bit, so that's the first thing we're going to work on. We're going to undo the alternator and see if we can move it out a few inches and see what we can do with that. Hopefully that's one of those things that's not going to be terribly difficult, and we can get it moved out, get it lined up, and see if we can get a test hit in on this thing. You know, check out this old vintage light a buddy of mine gave me. It's kind of like one of those old police lights, and it's got a magnet that sticks to the car. The head moves a little bit, and I think I'm going to try to use it to shed a little light on the situation. Shed a little light, shed a little light. Let's put it right there. maybe. Oh, the magnet's so strong on this thing. Put it like right. Wait a minute. Like right in there, maybe, possibly, somewhere like that. Over here, maybe here. Yeah. That definitely put some light on it. Turn it down just a little bit. And let's see what we can do about moving this thing out. Once again here, I'm my own worst enemy. Now I know a lot of you watch my channel because I do show you low buck, inexpensive, kind of down and dirty ways to do things. But that does not always mean I cut corners to do it. One of the issues with this setup is that the alternator is set back just a little bit further than I wanted it to. Did it work? Yes. But I would like for this belt to ride in the center of the pulleys. And it rode in the center of the alternator, but the water pump and the crank pulley, it was all the way against the back of the pulley. Does that matter? Probably not. But my drive to make this thing centered and a little better has opened a can of worms that I am currently trying to figure out how to stuff them back in the can. The effort that it's going to require just to move this alternator forward a ½ inch, it requires different bolts. I'll have to modify the brackets, and yeah, it's turned into quite the chore. Gonna need some spacers. Yeah. So what should have been a 5-minute job of putting a belt on, yeah, you guessed it, you'll probably see me tomorrow still working on this. So, well then. Alrighty then. Maybe some all thread would work. Maybe that's the way I need to go. Buy me a stick of all thread and lump it in there and try to go at it that way. Then I could adjust the bracket in and out the way I need to. But then I have a big bolt that holds the bottom of the alternator that it also would have to extend and become longer as well. Yeah. But this has a couple of weeks before it has to be at the vent. So I can come back to this, I can go out and back on this. The engine is something that tomorrow my entire day will be devoted to that engine, trying to get that engine put together, and going over the things that have kind of constantly been something with it. So yeah, we got some work to do to make it track ready. We're committed to doing a few test passes, at least some test launches and some 60-foot pulls on some pretty sketchy surfaces to see how much power I can put down on a worst case scenario and go from there. I think this car is capable of putting down some decent power. I'm not sure that it's capable of hooking up with decent power. And spinning ain't winning. All right, so what I've come up with to kind of re-engineer my situation here I just bought a whole stick of threaded rod. I'm gonna cut the length I need, thread it into the block, then make my spacers and all. Put a nut on the end, sandwich it in there. Very simple. This may not be the way some people will do it, but as you've seen in the past, I'm still gonna do it that way. I think this will work fine. I think it'll be a great solution to the problem that I'm having. And at the end of the day, will allow me to do everything I need to do, still use the original brackets and hardware. And yeah, I think this is gonna be the perfect solution to it. So I'm gonna take some measurements, cut off some of the threaded rod, and start fitting the brackets and all back in there. And we'll see how close we can get to getting this belt lined up so we can get this out of here and get to work on that motor, because we still need to do a little bit of a preparation for this weekend's race. Hopefully this weekend's race comes off without a hitch. There has been some developments in that situation, and we're gonna focus on this right now and get this ready for a race that I know is gonna happen. So let's get this cut. So when I do something like this, I'll take two, see if I can get the camera to focus. I take two bolts or two nuts, make jam nuts out of them, then take my wrench and put on there. That way I can run the threaded rod in there till it's tight and it bottoms out, just like that. Then I know it's all the way in there and it can't move. It's you know, rigid in there. That gives me a good way to tighten it down. And yes, this is going to be cut off some more, but I needed something to start with, so I'll trim it once I get the alternator in there and know exactly what I'm working with. Okay, so nothing's actually tightened down yet. We're just checking the alignment of the belt, and look at the belt falls dead in the center of my pulleys, which is what I wanted. I did have to put a little spacer right in there, and I want to trim my threaded rod off right there. It's a little close, although I don't think it actually hit anything, but there we go. A couple pieces of threaded rod got us out of a situation that I was not happy with. Belt now runs in the center. We're going to snug everything up, make everything good to go, and yeah, we're gonna call this project finitoed. Videotaped. I need to go out and check on some things. Not saying what I'm gonna be doing, but you know, just go out and check on some things and see how they work. And we're not gonna videotape that, but we may talk about some of the results and why. Well, as you can see, we're back from our test session, and just say things was not exactly what I had hoped for. While they were good and good things came out of it, things were just not where I wanted them to be, and it's going to take some effort to get them there. It's going to take some effort to get them there, and it's going to take some time. We are in a pretty good position with the Cougar, but we are far from where we want to be with the Cougar. Especially if we're going to try to run a race with it in a couple of weeks. We are definitely not where we need to be as a whole with that car. So we are working on that, and we are trying to improve on that situation. My tool's not cooperating here. We are trying to improve on that situation. Now, that car is something that we was trying to do for a backup for Still in Motion. And although it is going to work for what we're trying to do with it, it is not where we need it to be. There is still a lot to do with that car. Some of the issues that I noticed on our little test session earlier was one, we're running out of fuel on the top end. That is something that I will have to address, that I'm going to have to figure out. I'm not sure exactly why it's running out of fuel on the top end. I just know that it is. And I can't have that. So the basic gist of it is we've got some carburetor adjustments to do. Definitely needed to work on the traction situation a little bit. We were spinning a lot. And I think if we can get the spinning fixed and the top end carburetor lean issue figured out, I think we'll be good to go. I think we'll have something to work with. We're back to the situation of finishing up this customer motor. I think we finally got all the things we need, and I'm gonna go ahead and run these in real quick and bring you back in as we start to set the crank and all in. All right, so we got the cam bearings are in there. You've seen me do that 100 times. No real new thing there. I'm gonna go through here and pop in some main bearings. Just got to keep all these caps in the correct order. Generally, and what I will do now is I will stack them beside the motor in the correct order, and then we'll start popping the main bearings in and crank in. I mean, this thing will just pluck along from here out. So we're getting close now. We're getting close to having an engine. As always, the only bearings I use. That's the back of the box. You can't see anything there. Take two. The only, but now that's upside down. I'm telling you, I can't get my stuff together. Now let's try this. The only bearings I use, King bearings. I believe in them. I believe they're the best bearings on the market. You see an engine I put together all the way through it. King bearings. Everything on the engine will be King bearings. Now let me holler at you for just a second about parts choice. Now there's a ton of things I'll tell you it really does not matter. Especially if you're building a street application, it just does not matter. Get what you can afford and put the engine together. A few exceptions, that is, I am a diehard believer in King bearings, but let me preference that by saying, if you want to use a different bearing, go ahead. It's a bearing. It's on the street. Probably not going to notice a lot of difference. I know in most of my race applications, well, all my race applications, I run King bearings just because racers are kind of superstitious. If you have something that works, you don't change. You just keep working what works until you're given a reason not to. I have never had a failure with a King bearing. I have had failures with some of the other bearings on the racetrack. That could have been due to a million different scenarios that could have caused the bearing to fail, but I've never had a King bearing fail, so therefore, in my race applications, it's King or nothing. And it goes back to a lot of that is racer superstition, but I do believe in King bearings. Now, one thing I will not budge on, one thing I will not move around on. You will hear, if you spend enough time around people that tinker with FEs. They're not really FE guys, but they tinker with them. Is you will hear people talk about oil leaks. Two things you'll hear people say that's really not necessarily true is you'll hear them use the term, well, there's that FE exhaust leak, because they hear a lot of FEs with exhaust leaks. That's easily fixed. I'll go into that issue at a later time. The second thing you hear is, well, FEs leak a little oil. They just do. That's not true if you use a quality components. Now, one thing I will not skip on, there's times I'll go and buy the cheapest gasket set I can afford. Or the cheapest gasket set out there because that's all I can afford. And that's fine. Gaskets are gaskets most of the time. When it comes to like oil pan gasket or stuff like that, take a little dab of RTV and put on them or something. You'll be fine. It's really not the end of the world. Now, granted, on motors I'm building for somebody else, I don't do that. I generally get the best that I can get. But on my personal stuff, I don't really care. There's one exception to that. The rear main seal. Felpro. The Felpro rear main seal. The Felpro rear main seal kit is all I will put in one because they don't leak. They come with all the parts. They come with the seals. They come with these pieces that go on the side of your main caps. They come with the little dowels that drive in there. They come with everything in one kit. A lot of the gasket sets you buy will have just the rear seal, but they won't have these pieces, or the rear seal will be kind of flimsy and not really a decent seal. This is worth the extra money. I don't care if you go out and buy a gasket set from Walmart for $12 made by Mattel. I don't care. If you buy that, that's fine. Go somewhere then and buy this in addition to that, and the one that comes with the kit, just toss it. Felpro rear main seals, they don't leak. They just don't leak. And not saying that they couldn't, I'm just saying I don't generally have an issue with them. Another thing that people will do and cause leaks is these seals actually have a front and back. There's a little lip on there, and you have to look at them and see which way that lip is facing and put the rear seal in correctly. If you put it in the wrong way, it will cause a leak. So sometimes people will say, no, I've had leaks with the Felpros too, but you take them out and look and they were actually in backwards. These are good quality gaskets. I believe in these. Now, as I get ready to put this in here, as I said, they go in one direction. If you look at the back of the pack, it has written right there which direction it goes to. There's a large lip and a small lip. The larger lip goes to the front of the engine. It's not rocket science. It's very easy to do. Just make sure you do it the correct way. All right. As we set this in here, we're going to offset the seal. Now, it comes with a little piece of paper that will give you the depth that they recommend you offset it. But the important thing is that you offset it. It doesn't have to be exactly by this, but the important thing is that you offset a little bit. And what I mean by offset is, we've got that one set in, so I'm going to show you this one. When you put the halves in, if this is the direction it sits, cock it just a little bit so that these joints are not the same plane as the flat of the cap that comes down. So these are offset. So when you put them on there, these joints meet up inside the cap or down inside the block. It will help prevent any leaks. Now that we've got this set in here, now we're getting ready to put the crankshaft in. Engine assembly lube. This lube right here this is actually Engine Tech lube, and I like this lube. It's not the most expensive, and it's not the most famous or well known on the market, but this particular lube has a little extra zinc in it. The zinc content's a little higher than what some of the others are. I coat the bearings really well. I want to make sure that there's nothing going to be dry on startup. Now, I say that, but we will also pre-lube the engine. There we go. So one of the things I said when I started this is we were having a bunch of little issues that just all compounded on building this engine. It was just a bunch of weird stuff, and it just compounded because it was all on one project. One of the things that we had early on was the first crank. The first crank that I had ground, and this part of this will lead into some issues on my part, but the first crank we had ground, there were some dark spots on it, almost like it had gotten hot, and there's debate on if it matters. And if it was for my engine, I probably would have put it in there and took a chance on it. But since it's going to somebody else, I'm not going to take a chance on anything. So, had a second crank, got a hold of a second crank for the engine, and then we run into the issue where I put the bearings in them and the measurements didn't come out where they were supposed to be. Now this is where some of it runs into my problem. The bearings did not measure what they were supposed to be, and I realized afterwards that I was trying to get the measurements to match the crank that I was not using. I was measuring the wrong crank, or I was using I wasn't measuring the wrong crank. I was using the numbers from the old crank and trying to measure the bearings, and that was my fault. We ordered a second set of bearings to come in, and then I measured the journals on the crank, measured the bearings, and it still didn't come out right, which didn't make any sense. Well, the packaging invoice had on it the correct bearings that I'd ordered, but the bearings that were in the box were a different set of bearings. So that was somebody on a Friday putting parts in a box and just shipped the wrong bearings to me. So we ended up on our third set of bearings to get the right set of bearings. Now, in the big picture, not really a big deal. It's just getting the right parts, basically is what it comes down to. We just needed the right parts. It compounded so much on this project with time just because it all happened on this project. Normally you have something like that, one of those that happened on this project, and then over here on this project, one of those may happen, but all of it happened on one engine, so it just compounded the issue and made things take longer than they should have. So now that we're over that hurdle and we've got the crank laid in here, now we can get the rest of the main caps on, and we can get started on getting this bad mamma jambo up and running. So now I've got to get the bearings and the caps, get the main caps on, the rear main seal in, and we'll torque everything down. We'll have our crank in and set. Then we got to put our new pistons on rods. We're running a sealed power piston, basically a 30 over stock replacement piston. That's what the customer wants. The customer wants a pretty tame engine, so it's going to be 30 over. It's going to be a stock replacement style piston. Alright, so the crank is in, the caps are torqued. Now we got to do the rods and the pistons. That will probably either come later this evening or first thing in the morning. Everything's good. It's got a good rotation on it. It's got what I would consider the right amount of drag, if you will. The gap between the bearing and the crank is nearly spot on. Again, that was something we wrestled with. One thing that I found out a few moments ago that as long as I've been doing this, I did not know, has nothing to do with an engine. It has to do with my filming process. Not really one of those high dollar TV type folks. I film on my phone. I found out a while ago that if somebody's calling you, I've always just ignored it. If somebody called me while I was filming, didn't really pay any attention. But I guess I'd never paid any attention during the editing process.
until I was looking for something specific. Apparently, I got a phone call a little while ago while I was measuring the in play, and the phone doesn't record while it's ringing. I didn't know that, but I've already got all this done now, so I'm not gonna go back and undo it to show it to you. But basically, you want to measure your crankshaft in play here, and you do it with a caliper. I got a little magnetic base caliper, comes out here. You got a little dial that sticks right on the end of the crank. You take and pull your crank all the way to the back, set it, put it on there, move it forward, and you measure that in play. Now, that in play is something that if you search forums, people will debate to death. Ford literature says between 4 and 10. This is what I will tell you. If you're building a replacement engine as more of a stock performance engine, just build it by Ford specs. I mean, honestly, Ford engineers put a lot of time and effort into making sure these things last and run well. So just build it by what the Ford specs are. I do deviate from Ford specs sometimes, not on these, but on the race motors, just because I'm not doing what Ford intended for them to be done with. This motor right here is going to do exactly what Ford intended to do, drive around. So go back to what Ford tells you. Go back to what Ford tells you on your bearing clearances. Go back to what Ford tells you on your end play. Go back to what Ford tells you on your piston to wall clearance. Go back to what Ford tells you on all these tolerances, because Ford built these engines to last. They built them to work, and they do. Now I'm going to get some pistons loaded on, or get some rods loaded on some pistons. I'm going to get some pistons loaded onto some rods. Apparently I can't talk very well today either. So rods is one thing I have an abundance of. So we're going to go over here and we're going to pick out 8 of the best 390 rods I have, and start loading pistons up, and get these things in here and locked down so that we can have a good, strong engine. And secretly, I'm dying to see the truck that this is going in. So it reminds me a lot of my first truck that I had, same color and all. So we're gonna get this thing all buttoned up, and I guess the next thing you'll see me doing is loading the pistons onto the rods, and getting ring packs loaded up, and getting them slugged down in here so that it's ready to go. I hope y'all enjoyed this as much as I enjoy building these things. During race season, I don't get as much time to do this as I wish I did. Hey guys, I'm gonna do something that you probably never hear me do, and I'm gonna schlup off some of my own stuff for a moment. If you go to our website, 78speedshop.com, that's the name of my shop, 78speedshop.com. We have posters of the Galaxy there. Awesome posters. They're 11 by 17, I believe is what the size are. Just posters, and they're really cool posters. Got a real vintage look to them. They're available on our website. Really super proud of how they came out. You can find them there. Also, we have a new thing that we're offering. It's a subscription program for kids. It's called our Little Gearheads Club, and you can subscribe. It's $10 a month, includes shipping, and we'll send out some die-cast cars to your kid once a month. Get the little gearheads involved in the hobby. I'm sure your little boy, little girls will love them if they're into cars. And since I personally pick each one of these cars, it's not some random thing off her. You're not gonna get some bubble with an engine out of it. You're gonna get cars that look like actual cars that you would see on the street. So we make it kind of cool for them. So I just wanted to stop for a minute and let everybody know that we do have that. It's on 78speedshop.com. and you can find all that there along with tons of parts and stuff also. But the posters, all that goes straight back into our racing program to help feed the beast here, help take care of the Galaxy, helps with travel costs and things of that nature. It's a small little token, and really helps the race team. The Little Gearheads Club, I'm really not making any money off of that. I mean, I know $10 sounds like a chunk of money, but honestly, by the time we cover shipping, the cost of the cars and all that, I'm really not making any money. That's just something to give back to the kids. So go over and check it out, 78 Speed Shop. Right, so we're getting ready to put the pistons into the engine, or into the block. Cranks in there, everything's torqued down. So next comes the piston. These are a stock style replacement piston. These are a sealed power piston. Sealed power makes a great piston. I've never really had any problems with them. One thing I'll show you on the next one, and then I'll just go through and put them in, because you don't need to sit and watch me put pistons in holes. All FEs. Now I know if you're used to Windsor motors, small block Chevys, things of that nature, it might not be as common to you, or you might not be as aware of this, but all FEs have a floating pin design. Just floop, clip on each end, done. You don't need presses, you don't need to heat it, you don't need any of that stuff. They just right in there, pin in, good to go. These are a forward rod, sealed power piston, and of course our king bearings. And we're gonna drop them right in there. But one of the things I'm gonna talk about before we put these in here is it's very important for your piston wall clearance. You wanna make sure you have the proper amount of clearance between your piston and the wall. Too much clearance and you'll beat the skirt off the piston. It's gonna be rocking as it goes up and down. It won't cause problems. Not enough clearance, and well, things get tight, things go boom. So do your research. There's different clearances for different applications. Also, check your ring gap. A 4080 bore multiplied by the number that your ring manufacturer recommends, and you get what your ring gap should be. Now there's different ring gaps for different applications as well. Naturally aspirated street engines have a certain gap. Naturally aspirated race engines have a certain gap. When you're going to add boost to it, you have to open those gaps up. So be sure you gap it for what your application is. Again, this is just basically a rebuilt street engine. It's going to have a few upgrades, but it's basically a street engine is what it's going to be. So we want to make sure we get a good setup for the street, so that the motor lives for a long time. Keep in mind when you do this, again, I'll show you the ring stuff in a minute, but when you do this, there is a top and bottom on the first and second ring. There's one side that faces up and one side that faces down. Now, pretty much the majority of rings are marked. You just have to look for them. And depending on whose rings you use, they are marked in different ways. Some rings will have a little dot to signify the top and bottom. Some will literally have top written on them. It all depends on who the manufacturer is of your rings. So make sure that you look at the paperwork that comes with your rings. It will tell you how to decode this secret message. It is the decoder ring for your rings. Got that? So make sure you check that out. It's important. They got to go the right way so that they can scrape and stop, and compression and oil and all the things that rings are supposed to do, and seal and all that stuff. You got to have them turned the right way. I'm not a guy that just goes straight to cranking on anything with torque settings. I tend to rotate it out and back and sneak up on it. just because I want to make sure it's not cockeyed anyway. And I will double check them. All right, just like so. Then I am the guy that will rotate it over just to make sure everything feels free and there's no binding. Looks good. Looks good. All right, so that's one rod in. You don't need to watch me do a whole bunch of rods. I will show you the piston pin thing I was mentioning, but you don't need to sit here and watch me throw 8 slugs in holes. So that's one, and torque down, and we're just going to keep going like this till we get them all, in their respective homes, and yeah, we'll have a rotating assembly here. And once we get that, we'll go ahead and do the oil pump and oil pan. We'll go ahead and button up the bottom end of it so when we roll it over, it doesn't have to roll back over again. So yeah, y'all hang in there. So here's what I'm referring to with the floating pin. FE piston, you can just, pin just simply slides right in and out with your finger. No press or anything required. That actually, the weight of the pin itself will just kind of so that's what I mean. Most like a Windsor motor, small block Chevys, things of that nature, you have to press the pin in. They make little heat chambers. You can put them in, heat things up and push them through, but FEs are not like that. FEs are all floating pins, and they use a little snap ring on each end to hold it in. Very simple design. Makes it very, very garage builder friendly kind of thing if you don't have a press. I mean, you know, we got presses and all that stuff over there for the Windsors and 385 series, even the small block Chevys. We got the stuff to do that with, but I don't really do a whole lot of those. Matter of fact, my press is actually being used as a storage bench for the current moment because I'm an FE guy and I don't really need it for that. So very cool benefit to an FE. There's other engines out there like that, but we're not talking about them, we're talking about FEs. Welcome back. Did you miss me? I know it only seems like a minute for you, but it's been like a day for me. I missed y'all. By the time you see this, it'll been a week since you've seen me. I hope that I have sent no one into withdrawals. That's a heavy load to carry. I got some pretty big shoulders. All right, back to the nitty gritty. We've got crank, pistons, rods, all the fun stuff in. It's time to put a cam in this hole right here. Look, right in there. Now, again, this is where you can play around a little bit. We are doing basically a stockish motor. Now, originally, when me and the customer had talked about this, we tossed around some different ideas, and in those ideas we tossed out and back, originally there was some talk about a decent cam in here, and then there was some talk about, well, no, it's going to be a driver, it's going to be in a truck, so we don't want nothing radical, you know. So we kind of went out and back, and I think we finally left it at we do just something just a little better than it would have been stock. but we didn't talk about exact specifics. Well, I've got a cam on the shelf. Let me go grab it. I think it will fit this build perfectly. I think it's the right choice for this build, and it'll be a mild upgrade as a way for me to say, sorry, it's been taking longer than it should have. We're gonna give you a little mild upgrade, and hope you understand that everything going on, things kind of get backed up a little bit with parts issues and hectic schedules and all. So we'll give a mild upgrade, but still keep it stockish. How am I gonna do that? Okay, I have the paper here in my hand. And again, for whatever reason, I've been talking about it for a week, that the light bulb right here is burnt out, and you can see I jumped right on replacing it. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna use a stock-ish Ford cam, but give an upgrade to this 390. Now, how am I gonna do that? Well, it's very simple. I have a cam that is ground to the factory Cougar jet specs. Follow me down this wormhole for a minute. That keeps it a factory-ish Ford setup, but makes it more towards the performance side of what Ford done. That way we're not radical. It's still a street motor. This is still a cam that came from Ford. This didn't, but it's ground as a cam that came from Ford, and it's better than what would have been in a 390 from Ford. So it's a mild upgrade, but it still keeps you within a performance street orientation. We have a total peak valve lift. It's a 477 490 split duration. Ford would have done that from the factory in their performance application. So it's not over the top lit, but it's that much better than what a 390 would have had in it from the factory. I've done this before. It works phenomenal. It makes a great street cam, gives you great throttle response, and it keeps you in that range to where it's still just a nice daily driver, but it's got a little something when you romp on it. So that should put this in line with, an engine you would have found in the more factory performance cars. We're not building a race engine. We're not really building a hot rod. We're just building a good street driver. And I think this would be a good, upgrade. I think this would be a good combo. And honestly and truly, the first time I put the Galaxy together, the very first motor that I built for that car that I ran in 2019, is pretty much what I put in it. And I'm telling you, you could have drove that car to town to get ice cream on Saturday if you want to, and then go out and race it on, or out and get ice cream on Friday and then go out and race it on Saturday if you wanted to. The motor was very tame. The motor would sit there and purr all day long. So I've kind of done this combination before. I know it's not the big power, combination, but it's not the base little pickup truck motor either. This will be a good street engine to give you kind of a compromise of the best of both worlds. So when I install these things, I lube the snot out of them. We do all we can to make sure there's no lifter failures or none of that stuff, and just lubing the snot out of these things help. I do about half the cam, put it in there, let the engine hold it while I do the other half of the cam. Just lube the snot out of this thing. I also lube the cam gear, or not the cam gear, I'm sorry, the timing gear on the cam, distributor gear. I lube it all. I mean, I lube the snot out of this stuff. Spin it around, make sure we got plenty on there. Most people don't put that much on there. They'll say it's wasteful or whatever. I'd rather waste a little lube than waste a cam. So the short block's assembled, all but the timing chain here. I've got a nice timing chain set on the shelf over there for it. stick the oil pump on, oil pan on, short block will be assembled. I don't need to bore you with the rest of the details on assembling the short block. This video is already getting very long, and I try to keep my videos an hour or less in this new format because I don't want people feeling like they're stuck in their chair all day or can't watch it all. So we're gonna call this a done short block. Again, I'll go ahead and stick the timing chain set on, oil pan, oil pump and all that on, and get it done. The short block is assembled and it's ready to go. So we're gonna step away from this on this video for a moment. The heads are sitting right over there. They need to be assembled. They have been milled and all, but they just need to be assembled with the valves and springs and all that stuff. So I got to get the heads assembled to get them on here. But you'll see that stuff in the next video. Hopefully, again, we're just a little behind. There's been some issues and some developments this week, and we'll talk about those in just a moment. But next week, we should be able to fire this engine up. There's no real foreseeable reason why this engine isn't running next week. Next time you see this thing, the next video that we start, this thing will be an assembled short block or fully assembled short block. It'll have the timing chain cover on it, the oil pan on it, all that stuff will be on it. And we will be starting with putting the heads and intake and all that on. That'll be in the next video. Okay, so let's talk about the race this weekend. As most of you know, we had been working diligently on the Galaxy to get ready for the race this weekend. We had some issues at Shadyside. You can see that in the last video. I'm pretty sure we covered all that. That is part of the reason that engine should be going on a run stand this week, but it'll probably be next week before it happens because we had an issue with the Galaxy with the clutch and it put us behind, and we absolutely thrashed to get that Galaxy back together. I mean, to the point where we were calling in favors to get clutches, to get the clutch disc turned. It was one of those deals where we were really struggling to get the car back in race shape in time for the race this weekend. So there then ended up becoming a issue with the track. Last minute kind of issue with the track, not Southeast Gasser's issue. It was an issue strictly with the track surface, and they were not going to be able to solve that problem in time. So we had to back up and punt real quick. Not we, I mean the Southeast Gassers did. The powers that be there. So they worked diligently to try to find another location that could hold us, that could put us in and get us a race. So this all happened right around the weekend. We were putting the final touches on the car, so it was kind of in a holding pattern, but we were still working on the car. We got the car ready, not yet certain of what was going to happen. Again, kind of in a holding pattern. First of the week, we got the notification that the race was going to be moved to Wilkesboro Dragway. Never been there. So we were looking into that situation, and everything seemed to be a go there. Well, then we got the car ready. You seen the video, the car back, the car sitting there running, the car's ready to go. Then the weather kind of got us. Mother Nature kind of kicked us in the balls a little bit. And this race that we were supposed to be doing this weekend got postponed. Can't do anything about the weather. So now it's postponed for 2 weeks, and it's going to be at Wilkesboro. So we will keep you updated on that. We are strongly debating on whether we want to load the car up tonight and go test at Ware Shoals. I don't know yet. We're in again, it's awful overcast. Mother Nature may get me again. So we got to figure some things out. What you definitely will see upcoming. In the next video, you will see some passes from this car somewhere. Either we go test tonight, somewhere, or we're going to test in a couple of places next week. I'm going to go to a local event. Got the car in kind of its outlaw trim, a little low for Sega rules there. And we're gonna go lay down a pass and see what we can do with this thing. I think she's gonna make a good one, boys. I got a couple of things to button up, and that is a little concerning to me. So we're gonna see what we can do and see if we can't have some fun. Time slips? Where we're going, we don't need no stinking time slips. Guess we're gonna show up one of these little outlaw tracks, right?
Test pass.
You're not a professional bug.
I am not a professional bug. I'm not an amateur bug. I suck at being a bug.
Yeah.
Mary Beth Haynes, we love you. Thank you for keeping them straight.
We're going home now. All right, so the video you just watched of us making a pass. Let me explain a couple things because there will be questions if I don't. The idea was to run out there real quick, make a test hit, get home. And kind of that's what we did. Several things happened, and 99% of everything that happened fell on me. That's what it is. First, I've never been to that spot before. Never been there. Didn't know anything about the place, the prep, the staging. Didn't know nothing about it. So, first thing that happened. Let me back up. First thing that happened. I've never ran that car in the dark before, so when I turned my lights on, the light attack didn't work. I knew that was going to be a problem, but I done went out there. I wasn't aborting trying to make a pass. So I knew that was going to be a problem. Second thing that went wrong, their water box is kind of weird for me because I've never been there or I've never been any place that had one like that before. You have to kind of turn, make a left turn, pull up staging lanes, and back all the way back near the wall for their water box. Most of the tracks that I've ever been to, or any of the tracks I've ever been to, has a real small water box. You thump and you're in it, out, do you burn out. They have a freaking water pit. It's like a damn swimming pool. I mean, it's a big water spot. So, and I always have somebody guiding me too. I didn't there. So I backed up, I pulled up to what I thought was out, but I wasn't. I was still in the water when I done my burnout. So my tires are still wet. So strike one, the tack, strike two, the water there. I rolled up and I was in the next zip code from the groove. I was way out of the groove. You can see that if you've been on the pictures. I mean, I was two tire widths. I was just way out. So it was already going to be kind of a bad pass anyway, but I didn't care. That car has never been A to B with that engine combination or that drivetrain combination in it, so I needed to know what it would do. All right, so we roll up, stage, and I leave. Strike whatever I'm on now because I didn't realize they had a sportsman's tree and not a pro tree. I've always ran a pro tree. So when I seen yellow, I was gone. My fault. Doesn't matter. No, that doesn't even matter because I had my I had some onboard data logging on there for this. I do not run onboard data logging anywhere else. I ran it for this just so that I could get accurate information on how to set the car up for the future. So left, went down the track. Of course, I was out of the groove. Now, if you watch the video, and according to the data, it was only a few feet in and it starts hazing the tire. And I stayed in it thinking it was just gonna catch back up because it was just a light haze. Well, if you watch the video, it's white smoke in the tire. Not like a John Force white smoke, but you can see some white smoke coming off the tires down low. And it done it pretty much till the 1-2 shift. When I hit the 1-2 shift, you can see the car skirt over toward the wall a little bit and come back over, so the car starts drifting around. And it did that pretty much the rest of the pass. So it was not a great pass for a race, but it was an amazing pass for data. The information we got from that pass is going to make this car great. That pass right there is going to make this a great car, because I learned a lot of things in that pass. One, the front shock change I did, it did not like. You can tell that when it launches. It did not like that front shock change. The idea behind that was it was pulling the front tires up, and I wanted to slow that down. Well, I didn't slow it down. What I done was just make it hop in the front. So anyway, the front pass was the front shock change was wrong. It didn't work. Also, I came up with a couple of tweaks to the engine that I need to do. So we're going to implement some of them. You'll see them probably in the next video. We'll implement some of them and make another test pass and see if we can't creep up on what some of these super stock guys are running. And I think we're right there. Matter of fact, we are right there. We just need a few little small tweaks. And if I can make a pass that's competitive and the car doing all of that, we got something to work with. We got something really good to work with. So y'all stay tuned. God bless y'all. I hope you enjoy the content. Please remember to subscribe. We're very close to our goal of 1,000 subscribers. So please subscribe, share some videos, help some other people out. But it doesn't take you any time to just click that button. So I really do appreciate it. Remember, if you want a poster of the car, you can find it at 78speedshop.com. And our little Gearheads Club if you want something for your kids. Y'all stay tuned. It's getting good now. We're starting to get into some race content. I hope the Lord blesses you today more than he did yesterday. God bless y'all, and we'll see you next time.